Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Coaster-net Update. We've got some breaking news out of Lost Island Theme Park and Six Flags Great America, where they both have announced brand new roller coasters this week for the 2025 season. So, Jeff, let's start with Lost Island because we've covered both of these kind of extensively leading up to these announcements. So we kind of thought that both these parks were getting brand new roller coasters for 2025. And we knew that Lost Island was teasing an RMC coaster. We weren't really sure if it was going to be a Wild Moose or a Raptor track, but we got a Raptor track. So what do you think?
Yeah, so the North American Raptor ends up going to Lost Island. It's going to be called Fire Runner, which is going to be the easiest to pronounce coaster in their entire lineup. Uh, I'm not going to take a shot at the other ones, but it looks
Right.
to be, not a custom layout. It's going to be like Stunt Pilot and Wonder Woman and Railblazer, but it's going to have 12 car trains.
That's the difference here. So when you look at the stats, it is 150 feet longer than the other ones. But we kind of talked about it, and we both suspect that's just to accommodate probably those two extra rows, those two extra cars on the train. If you estimate, between 8 and 10 feet per car, so you're adding an extra, 20 or so feet to each train. So you have the transfer track, you have the brake run, you got the lift hill. So I don't think we're going to see that much different of a layout at all, or even elongating it. But you're going to have those two extra rows, so you have to accommodate those feet somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, I'm anticipating all that extra space is going to come as flat tracks and maybe a turn to kind of get back to the station, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Now the question is how that's going to affect the ride itself, because I've been on Railblazer, I've not been on Wonder Woman or Stunt Pilot, and it's a real zippy ride. And the bigger RMC Raptors like Jersey Devil and Wonder Woman at Magic Mountain have those two extra rows. And I know some of the people that I know that rode it said it was a little sluggish, they felt, and I don't know if that's because of the design of the track or the design of the train. It's hard to tell. So hopefully this one still keeps its zip a little bit, right?
Yeah, so I've not been on one of the smaller ones. I've only been on the Jersey Devil. And I know when I was watching, like, especially off-ride video of like Railblazer or Wonder Woman, it looked like the video was sped up. It was like comically fast looking. Right. But like I was
RMC in a
trying to,
nutshell, right?
but like just people
Oh,
cycling.
Wicked Cyclone.
I'm not talking about animations or marketing. I'm just saying it looked like faster than you would expect it to be able
Yeah.
to move.
Uh-huh.
And Jersey Devil does not feel like that. I don't think it's sluggish. I really like Jersey Devil. I think it's a fun ride, but it doesn't feel marketably different than like Twisted Timbers or Wicked Cyclone or their Iron Horses that are about that like same size of like 100 or so feet. Um, so I'm kind of curious to see, is it going to kind of take those elements and split the difference a little bit and it feel a little sluggish, or is it going to have no impact at all?
Well, and
Um,
that's the thing. It could have no impact at all. If they test it, the height's the same. It looks like the top speed is the same based on what RCDB has, and looking at the ride, Jersey Devil's designed differently too. It has different elements. It's designed to be more of a hilly coaster than so you're not going to get like the super tight turns that you have on the original Raptors, like Railblazer and Wonder Woman and now Stunt Pilot.
yeah,
Um,
it's
so
actually more like Goliath, where it's kind of like a double out and back, so it doesn't tie itself into a knot like in the same way.
yeah, so absolutely. So like this one it's still going to have a dive loop, still going to have a corkscrew. So we assume it's going to be a clone of the other ones, just modified slightly for the extra two cars, which is also kind of funny because like you're adding capacity, which is always the big criticism of these rides, of these single rails, is, oh, you only get 10 people per ride, and now you're getting 12 people per ride. And a park like Lost Island that still hasn't really developed a solid attendance base yet. I think it's going to be fine there for now, and I think this is actually a ride that they really really need at that park, another high thrill ride, modern roller coaster that's really going to bring in. It's it's not going to draw people there just because of what it is. If it's a clone of the other ones, people have probably ridden maybe Wonder Woman or Railblazer. Their Fiesta in California's Great America is still kind of like outside that circle of where most Thuzies get. Fiesta's probably more likely to have been, you're probably more likely to have ridden Wonder Woman than Railblazer. Railblazer's all the way out there on the West Coast in San Francisco. Um, I really liked Railblazer. I don't think it's like an out of this world ride, but I think it's a solid addition to any coaster lineup, which is what Lost Island's building here. Now they have the launch coaster, the old Cannon, they have the SLC with the better restraints, so that's kind of nice on that one. I'm curious to ride that over there, and now they have this one, so they have a solid lineup of coasters, and hopefully as they grow, they continue to grow, and hopefully they continue to add to this collection, and they have a solid lineup right now, and then adding like something really big in the future maybe will really put that park over the top for coaster enthusiasts.
Yeah, and like you said that they're about 4 hours from you, and you're just
Yeah.
outside of Chicago. Hershey Park's about 4 hours from me, being on Long Island. So like that's not that far for like those two metro areas to really travel, especially if they start establishing themselves as a place to go.
And
Uh,
yeah, and like that's the thing, like right now, like the park's really good for Iowa because like you have Adventureland that has a pretty decent lineup of coasters now. You have a wood coaster, you got Monster that's, really good coaster. So I think the two parks, Adventureland and Lost Island, have comparable ride lineups at this point. Um, and as if we see them grow, and it seems like Adventureland wants to grow, it seems like Lost Island wants to grow. So as they grow, now you're going to start attracting more and more people from Chicago. Because the other problem is yeah, Lost Island is 4 hours away from Chicago, but Cedar Point's 4.5 hours away from Chicago. Plus you have Great America. Plus you have Mount
right.
Olympus or St. Louis.
Mhm.
So you have a lot of like theme parks that are already well established every other direction except for Iowa. And that's where you have Adventureland and Lost Island now that are beginning to get into these that are a building phase, I would call it.
Yeah, and even though it's not a custom layout, it's going to be a unique experience for people in the area, and even for people in the Midwest in general. Like you said, Texas,
Yeah.
Northern California, and Idaho. Like those are really far away and not as easy
And
to
even
get.
if you count the bigger ones, Jersey Devil is, on the East Coast,
Yeah,
Wonder Woman's on the West Coast. So
LA,
there's
yeah, they're really
no
far.
Midwest single rail.
Yeah,
So you're going to get that unique experience that if you wanted to ride a single rail, well, now you have your opportunity that's only 4 hours from Chicago or in the Midwest. Like now we have that opportunity to go ride a single rail. So that's kind of cool too.
right,
It's like
and
honestly, like I have no intention of going back to San Francisco anytime soon.
yeah,
Fiesta's
no,
hard for me to get to.
yeah.
So if I want to ride that first, zippy Raptor track, like this might be the place to go if you really. And a lot of people really like this ride too. Just because I don't rank it super high, I think it's like a solid ride. There are
Yeah.
people that rank Railblazer and Wonder Woman like in their top 50. So like
Yeah, a
there's
lot of
people
people
that love
freaked
it.
out about it, especially when it was brand new. Yeah,
Yeah.
it had
So I
that
so
that
I
shine
think it's
on
a
it.
really good addition for I think it's much better than having a family coaster be put into Lost Island because I think they need to establish themselves as a coaster park. And I think this kind of gives them another leg up on that. They have the SLC, they have the Intamin launch, and now they got the Raptor. So I think it really establishes them as okay, we're trying to be serious, but we still have a budget.
Yeah, and if you're going to draw people in from out of the area, I think thrill rides are the way to do it. Family rides are probably not. Your
Yeah.
family rides and your water park, that's for your local base.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll see how this goes, but I'm excited about Fire Runner, and I like the logo and everything too. I like the intro video and what they did with it and the lava.
Yeah.
So,
And it's
maybe,
going to have a very important record. It will be the first single rail roller coaster in Iowa.
well, yes, yes. Dubious records are the name of the game today, I think. Um, and we also, you never know, Lost Island might theme the hell out of this ride too. So
Yeah.
that's the other part of that we don't know yet is Lost Island has been putting heavy theming into almost everything that they do. So I know Wonder Woman has a nice little lagoon and some good like statues of Wonder Woman in Fiesta. So maybe this has some good theming elements tied to it too to make it stand out above the other ones. So
That's true. And Stunt Pilot has a barn, and Railblazer has the rock work. So yeah, they
yeah,
might do something like that to compete.
yeah,
The rest of the park, I've not been there, but people that I've talked to have said it's beautiful. That it's
yeah.
really nice park.
Yeah. And they do some great stuff there. I just follow their social medias and they have characters and their characters are unique and they look cool. Like it's a place that I want to get to next year and I think this is going to do it for me. So
Yeah.
congrats. You sold one ticket. So let's move on to the next big announcement this week and that was the announcement of Six Flags Great America, the Wrath of Rakshasa. That you have to spell it right too, because I did not spell it right on one of the things I did. So the Wrath of Rakshasa, we said that that was going to be the name. It is a dive coaster, as was expected by a lot of people. We were hoping for other things, but we got the dive coaster. But I will say this: looking at the layout, I am really surprised that in a 172-foot coaster, a dive coaster, that they're able to get 5 inversions. It looks like they are using the exact plot of land we talked about. It does not look like they are using the go-kart track across the
No.
way. So they are able to fit this all into that little area where the Buccaneer Battle used to be. It is going to use some space to the side of it as well. Um,
Yeah. It looks like it's going to jump the midway and kind of use that area as a way to kind of spread out instead of encroaching on some other stuff.
and I've watched the PO, I've watched the because they did not release a POV of it. They
Oh,
released the off ride with a mix of a little bit of POV, just basically, like the sizzle reel as they call it.
nice. Yeah.
Um, right. And we can't tell if they were closing off the midway or if, because when I was looking at the bridge that would take you over to Demon is still there, still has like the little side pieces on it. So I saw that in some of the shots. I
I feel
don't know.
like you can see the midway in the in some of those shots. I
I
don't think
feel like
that
you can
changes
too.
that.
And one of the cool parts about Griffin at Williamsburg is that you can like kind of like stand under almost under the actual dive portion and like look up at it. So if you get like that experience here, like that's gonna be a really cool experience because like Valraven's cool because you can stand next to it, and Sheikah's cool because you can stand next to it, and Sheikah has the splashdown. But if you can like stand right underneath the dive, that would be really cool. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen or if they're going to tie off that area, which they very well could because of safety concerns with stuff falling out of people's pockets. And
Yeah, there could be like a net or a
yeah, and
tie
Williamsburg
something
has a net
there.
all has netting all over the place to so that people have those same experiences. Um, but the layout itself looks kind of interesting. What did you think about it?
I thought it looked cool. It actually, it made me think of Batman a little bit, especially the end of the layout because it's so like tangled up in itself.
Hmm.
But it looks like it'll have a little interaction with the lift hill of Demon. It looks like it'll have a little interaction with X Flight as well. It kind of like uses a little bit of that one over there. So
Hmm.
it's going to kind of like jump the midway. It's going to interact with people that aren't on the ride, and it's going to interact with 2 other rides. It's also got some unique elements for for us. So I know Danny really liked Schwer de Carmen because of that demonic knot
Yeah,
inversion. And
talks about
this,
that all the time.
yeah, but obviously it made an impression on him. I mean, I have heard him bring it up several times, and this is going to have that same kind of inversion, that like corkscrew kind of like roll that they've got. The way it kind of like climbs and then dives after it is kind of different and unique as well. I think that looks really cool. Definitely something that I don't feel like I've seen that profile from B&M before.
Well, and it's interesting because like Great America tends to do different stuff with their B&M. So if you look at like Raging Bull doesn't
Yeah.
follow. There is no other like model out there or version of a B&M hypercoaster out there that kind of follows what Raging Bull does. Like it's kind of everyone calls it a hyper twister.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely the outlier of that type.
yeah, you can't like match up Raging Bull to any other B&M like tall coaster. And even X Flight does It does. X-Flight does a lot of the similar things to, other wing coasters. But this one does definitely seem like it's going to be different for a dive. The five inversions, my main thing with Iron Menace was like you do the dive and then it seems like your standard out and back. It didn't seem like anything unique. You have a few inversions here and there just to get you back to the station and do something. But this looks like it has, like you just listed, pretty unique inversions on it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, like I said, to get five inversions on something in that small of a plot of land and only 172 feet tall. Like this is gonna be like real flippy, and I think it's gonna be kind of cool with the wide trains and the seven across trains, and um, I it's gonna be a nice addition to Great America that they needed. Great America needed another big coaster that people are gonna line up for, and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel. This is not gonna feel like, and not to say that Max Force feels cheap or anything, but it's like Max Force, it has three elements on it. Like you launch,
Sure. Yeah.
you go up, you come back, and you do a few things. Like it just feels like it's a very short ride. X Flight feels like a full ride to me. Goliath feels like a full ride to me. And they've installed a lot of good stuff. Like I love Joker, but I get that it's a gimmick ride. Like not everyone's gonna love that. This is gonna feel like another solid roller coaster. In addition to they actually have a really nice B&M lineup all of a sudden, right? They got X-Flight, they got Raging Bull, they got this new Rakshasa, and then they got Superman up front. Like all of a sudden, they got Batman, the original Batman,
Man.
right? All of a sudden, like Great America is like the B&M park. Like it's kind of cool. Like out of nowhere, they're B&M.
Well, it's gonna have way better capacity than Joker or Max
Oh,
Force as
for sure.
well, which is gonna be good because it's a busy park. I did really like Iron Menace. I liked certain changes that they made on Iron Menace compared to the bigger ones, which I do like better. I do like I think Sheikah's the best one still. But I like the Beyond vertical drop. I felt like it gave you a nice pop. It made that drop a little more exciting, even though it was a little shorter. I like that there was no mid course. It felt like you were really cranking through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Iron Menace did feel a little short. Maybe with all these changes in direction and that little bit of extra space there and elements, this one won't feel that way.
Well, I feel
It
like
might be an
this is
improvement.
like I'm hoping that this ride, because like Danny raves about the wing coasters over in Europe, and the one big change that those wing coasters did was to make them less long, less sweeping, and make it into tighter elements that do more things, that do more inversions. And I feel like I thought that's what I was getting with Iron Menace. And not even based on like before even like we saw the actual layout. I thought that's what we were going to go for, was something that was tighter, something that was more inversions, and now that's what we actually got here is with this one. So I'm hoping that that increases what this does and what a dive coaster can do. I always like rides that break out of the model. Like I'm a huge fan of Flying Dino in Japan because it breaks the model of what a flying coaster should do. I actually really like Raging Bull. I wish they would take the trims off of it. So anyone listening that works there, take those trims off of it, because without those trims, that ride would be amazing. Even people who have ridden it a couple of times without the trims have been lucky enough to ride it without the trims have said no. Uh, it completely changes the layout, and I think I always say Raging Bull is like half of a good roller coaster because every time that you feel like you're getting into something, you hit a brake run or you hit a trim or you hit something and it slows it down. But you let that one go loose, and I think that one would be an amazing be a top 25 coaster, I think, in a lot of people's books. So now we see this dive coaster kind of breaking the mold a little bit of what the dive coasters do, and I'm all for it. I think it's going to be cool.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the POV as well because when we talked about Rapterra, like we wanted there to be more like built scenery, but it's only
Yeah,
around the launch. But when you look at the POV, you can see that there's a lot of near miss elements with the ride structure itself. And I
yeah.
think that because of the way this wraps around itself, there's going to be that potential. So I'm very curious to see that real POV so we can see how it'll interact with its own structure.
Yeah, because the animations, the station didn't look all that inspired. There were no built structures, and I think with something like the name of the Wrath of Rakshasa, I think you're going to need something to sell people on this story, because
Yeah,
one, people are going to struggle with the name, just like I have been
yeah,
this entire show. So people are going to struggle with the name, and they're going to need to understand what that is. So I'm hoping that they add something to kind of clue us into what's going on with the name and what's happening, and it just not be like a name and without
yeah,
nothing tied to it. So maybe we see some elements be added. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but usually what we see on the POVs and the animations are what we get. So
yeah. Hopefully there'll be like a really cool entrance sign
yeah, something
because
like
there's
I
no
like because
scenery.
they're really playing up the tiger theme too. Like even days before the announcement, they put together a whole there was a QR code you could scan, and it was just a whole series of different tigers. Like Tiger Woods was in it,
Okay.
Tony the Tiger was in it. There's a whole bunch of tigers. So they're really playing up this tiger theme to it. The colors don't match tiger because the colors of the
Oh,
ride are gold and blue.
yeah,
So I think they're gonna have to explain it to us, and hopefully they explain it to us through the station and through the stuff that's around it.
yeah.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Maybe there'll be
So
like signs along the way so you can have
yeah,
something.
well, that's typical. Well, it's Cedar Fair now, so you never know what they do. So that would mean no theming. At least Six Flags used to put up signs.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the one letdown here. Of the lack of like what it seems to be like elements to go through, but it's fine. I think like you said, the structure's going to provide those near misses. And hopefully they play up the name and what it means and explain it to us somewhere through the actual queue or through the actual station. So we'll see what happens.
You
Um,
never know. Maybe there'll be like a cool place to get like curry chicken or something right next to
Yeah,
it.
right. Like play up the whole culture a little bit. Like I'd
Get
love
some
to see that.
now.
Play up the culture.
Yeah.
Some people would not like to see that, but I would
Right.
like.
It's variety. Everybody
Yeah, right.
complains, oh, you don't want chicken fingers and pizza, you know,
God knows we need more
variety.
variety in the theme parks, especially when it comes to food. I don't care what they put in. And I'm still we have not seen a solid logo yet either, have we?
Not
Or
really,
did we?
no.
We just saw like name font, right?
Yeah,
Like type font.
just like a word mark kind of thing.
Yeah, so like a word
At
mark
least I
thing.
haven't
So
seen that before. And
because
it
that's
looks
the other piece of
uh,
this.
kind of like stone or something. It kind of reminds me of the Goliath at Magic
Yeah,
Mountain a little bit, what I'm
absolutely.
looking at right now.
Hey, just do that. Have a
Yeah.
big plaza with
It's
Brooks.
funny the Six Flags logo on this artwork is the old Six Flags logo too.
Oh, interesting. Hmm. Maybe they'll
So
go back to that.
no, they probably just made it before they changed it.
Well, a lot of this was probably designed before the big
Yeah.
merger and everything, so those are the two big announcements this week. We got Fire Runner and the Wrath of Rakshasa over at Great America. So two big rides announced. Now I believe Six Flags as a corporation, as a combined corporation, there are two more rides out there that they have not announced yet. Because they said in the press release there are 7 coasters being added next year. I believe Six Flags Mexico will be one of them, right? They're getting the tilt coaster, and then
That's what everybody's thinking. Yeah.
supposedly Magic Mountain was in play to get something.
I don't know. Magic Mountain, I mean, like they were clearing land, I feel like in June, but since then I haven't heard anything. So
Yeah,
I'm not really sure what to think with that one yet. I don't
and
even know if it's used anything in the park, at least not that I've heard.
and I don't think they're including the two rides that they just announced are not opening until next year, which is Flash and Georgia Surfer. Georgia Surfer, is it? Right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds right. The power splash out there. So I don't think they're including those two, because I don't think you'd want to promote that further. But we know Mexico's getting the tilt coaster, so I'm assuming there's one other park in the Six Flags chain that is getting another coaster according to their press release. So I think it might be Magic Mountain, but I won't swear to that. I have to look more into it.
It's going to be an Axis. You heard it here first.
Oh, it's gonna be an coaster. We're going with it. So Stephen Lynn, he's predicting dark ride for Cedar Point
Dark
for the
Ride.
last half decade.
He's going
And
to be
you're
one day. He's
predicting
going to be right.
Yeah, one day he's going to be right. I don't know if it's anytime soon, and one day you're going to be right with this Access coaster. Although I've heard that it might be dead too, that the Access coaster might be a failed concept. We'll see what happens. Um, but thank you for joining us here. As always, I am Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Jeff Goodman on Long Island, New York.
Right on, Ride Warriors.